He didn't scream. He didn't even raise his voice. He just stood there, silhouetted against the warm, amber glow of the home I had spent 6 years decorating, and handed me a suitcase like I was a guest who had overstayed her welcome. "She said you hit her, Elena," he whispered, his voice a low, jagged blade that sliced through the cold November air. "She said you've been jealous of her since the day we moved in together." Behind him, framed by the expensive mahogany doorframe, his 20-year-old daughter, Tessa, watched from the shadows. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a victor. Her eyes met mine, sharp, triumphant, and utterly devoid of the tears she had supposedly shed just moments before. I was being exiled from my own life because of a lie, and Grant, the man I had built a business with, a life with, and a future with, was the one holding the door open. "Grant, look at me," I said, my voice steadier than my heart. "You've known me for a decade. You know I don't have a violent bone in my body. You know she's been trying to push me out since she moved back from college." He didn't look at me. He looked at the gravel of the driveway. "Take some time, Elena. Go stay with a friend. Reflect on what you've done. Maybe then we can talk about a way forward." "Reflect?" I let out a laugh that felt like it was made of broken glass. "You want me to reflect on a fantasy? You're choosing a performance over a person." He stepped back and closed the door. The click of the deadbolt was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I stood there on the porch, my suitcase at my feet, and watched the house I loved turn into a fortress that I no longer had the key to. He told me to reflect, so I did. I reflected on the 6 years I had spent being the supportive stepmother. The 3 years I had spent quietly fixing the messes Grant made at his firm, and the 10 seconds it took for him to incinerate my dignity. By the time I reached my car, the shock had been replaced by a cold, surgical clarity. Grant wanted a reflection. Fine. I would give him one that would burn his perfect world to the ground. For 21 days, I lived on a sofa in my friend Claire's spare room. I didn't call him, I didn't beg. I didn't send frantic texts explaining my side of the story. I knew Grant. If I chased him, he would feel powerful. If I went silent, he would begin to rot from the inside out. Instead of crying, I spent my nights in front of a laptop. I was the one who had set up the family's digital infrastructure. I was the one who managed the backup servers for Grant's corporate accounts. While Tessa was busy posting, healing vibes, and toxic people out on her Instagram, using photos of the living room I had designed, I was looking at the numbers. I found the first thread on night 4. A $1,200 charge at a high-end spa in the city, tagged under corporate hospitality. Then a $2,500 withdrawal for consulting fees that led directly to a designer boutique. Tessa hadn't just been lying about me hitting her. She had been treating her father's corporate credit card like a personal lottery ticket. While she was whispering in his ear about my jealousy, she was draining the company coffers to fund a lifestyle her influencer career couldn't support. She thought she was clever. She thought that because I was gone, the watchdog was asleep. On day 15, Grant finally texted, "Can we talk? I think we both need closure. Come by on Friday at 6:00. I didn't reply immediately. I waited 4 hours. "I'll be there. I have my reflection ready." When I pulled into the driveway on Friday evening, the house looked exactly the same, but it felt like a tomb. Grant opened the door looking tired. His suit was wrinkled, and there was a pile of mail on the entryway table that hadn't been touched. He looked like a man who was expecting a tearful apology and a desperate plea to come home. "Elena," he said, stepping back to let me in. "I'm glad you came. Tessa is in the kitchen, but maybe we should go to the study." "No," I said, my voice echoing in the hallway. "The kitchen is fine. I want her to hear this." We walked into the kitchen, where Tessa was sitting at the island, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, her expression shifting instantly into a practiced sneer. "Oh, you're back. Come to tell us more lies?" I didn't even look at her. I turned to Grant and handed him the heavy manila envelope I had been carrying. "What is this?" Grant asked, frowning. "Is this an apology letter?" "It's my reflection, Grant," I said calmly. "Everything you asked for is in there." He opened the envelope. The first thing he pulled out wasn't a letter. It was a set of divorce papers, signed and notarized. The air left the room. Grant's face went from pale to ghostly white in 3 seconds. Elena. What, divorce? We haven't even talked about this. We talked 3 weeks ago, Grant. You made your decision when you handed me that suitcase. You chose to believe a lie because it was easier than parenting your daughter. I'm just making that choice permanent. But this is an overreaction. Tessa chimed in, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. You're just doing this to be dramatic because you got caught. You hit me, Elena. You pushed me. I finally turned to her. My gaze was so cold she actually physically recoiled. Tessa, I didn't hit you. I brushed past you in a hallway after you called me a freeloader. If that's assault, then you're going to find the real world very, very difficult. But that's not what's in the rest of that folder. Grant was already flipping through the pages behind the divorce decree. His hands started to shake. What? What are these? These are my corporate statements. Keep reading, I said. Check the dates. Check the merchant IDs. While you were throwing your wife out for toxic behavior, your daughter was spending $7,000 of your firm's money on spa days, designer bags, and a weekend trip to a music festival. She used your corporate card, Grant, the one I used to manage. Grant looked at Tessa. The silence in the kitchen was suffocating. Tessa, she's lying, Tessa shouted, her face turning a blotchy red. She's hacking. She's trying to frame me because she hates me. I don't hate you, Tessa, I said quietly. I'm just indifferent to you. And the bank records don't lie. The IP addresses used to authorize those emergency charges match your phone's ID. Every single one. Grant sat down heavily on a bar stool. He looked like a man who had just realized he had burned down his own house to save a weed. Elena, I didn't know. That's the problem, Grant, I said, picking up my purse. You never want to know. You wanted a wife who would fix your life and a daughter who would love you, but you weren't willing to do the work for either. You believed her lies because it was the path of least resistance. Well, this is the path of most resistance. Wait, Grant stammered, standing up. We can fix this. I'll make her pay it back. I'll make her apologize. I'm already fixed, Grant, and as for the money, I've already moved my half of the joint accounts. It's legal, it's fair, and it's gone. You can use the rest to pay off Tessa's shopping spree. I walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard the sound of Tessa starting to cry. The real kind of crying this time, the kind that comes from being caught. I heard Grant's voice break as he finally started to yell at her. I didn't look back. I stepped out into the night air, and for the first time in 6 years, I could breathe. I didn't stop at the divorce. I wasn't interested in a quiet exit. Grant's firm was built on a foundation of integrity and family values. That's the image I had crafted for him. 2 days after I left the house, I made one final stop at his corporate headquarters. I didn't need an appointment. The staff still saw me as the boss's wife. I walked straight into his office, where he was sitting amidst a mountain of paperwork, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. Elena, please, he groaned. Not now. The board is asking questions about the missing funds. I know they are, I said, setting a thumb drive on his desk. Because I'm the one who flagged the audit. I'm not just your wife, Grant. I'm a shareholder. And I won't have my dividends diluted by a 20-year-old's shoe habit. You went to the board. He looked at me with a mix of awe and terror. I went to the truth, I corrected. I gave them everything. Tessa's spending, the forged authorizations, and the fact that you allowed it to happen under your watch. They're calling for a vote on your leadership, Grant. He stared at the thumb drive like it was a live grenade. Why would you do this, after everything we were? Because you taught me that loyalty is optional, I said. You taught me that when things get uncomfortable, you throw people away. I'm just applying your own logic to your career. I walked out of that glass building and never went back. By that afternoon, the office gossip mill had turned the supportive wife into a legendary figure of vengeance. Grant was forced to take a leave of absence. Tessa was cut off, her influencer lifestyle collapsing as her father's credit cards were deactivated one by one. 3 months later, I was sitting on the balcony of my new apartment. It was smaller, but it was mine. There were no ghosts here. No framed photos of a family that didn't exist. I opened my email to find a message from Tessa. It wasn't the fiery, arrogant girl I knew. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix it. My dad is barely talking to me. I'm working at a diner to pay him back. I shouldn't have said those things. I just wanted him to choose me for once." I read it twice. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a strange, cold peace. "I don't hate you, Tessa," I replied. "But your worth doesn't come from who your father chooses. It comes from who you choose to be when no one is looking. Learn that, and you might actually survive the real world." I hit send and closed my laptop. Grant tried to call me once a week for months. He sent flowers. He sent long, rambling emails about reflecting on his failures. He told me he had started therapy. He told me he missed the way I looked at him. I never answered. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to be burned so you can see your way forward by the light of the flames. "Mom, come on. The ice cream is going to melt." I turned around and smiled. My son, Evan, was standing in the doorway, holding a pint of mint chocolate chip and 2 spoons. He had been staying with his father during the worst of the divorce, but now he was back with me in our new sanctuary. "Coming, baby," I said, walking toward him. I had spent years trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect stepmother, and the perfect business partner. I had spent years reflecting the light of other people. But as I sat on that floor, eating ice cream with my son and listening to the quiet of a life I had reclaimed, I realized the waitress at the diner was right. Starting over isn't just a beginning. It's the best kind of ending. Grant told me to reflect. And I did. I reflected on the fact that I am Elena Ward. I am a survivor, an architect, and a woman who knows exactly what she is worth. And that is a reflection no one can ever take away from me again.